Just terrible treatment of Asian people.
Well, as we're talking about this long history of anti-Asian sentiment in this country, the ebb and flow of it, as you put it, I mean, you personally have had a long career thinking, litigating, writing about anti-Asian feeling in the U.S. Is it possible for you to picture at this moment where things might go from here? I mean, does now feel like a moment of change?
Nhiều.
It does. I think partly when you see Black Lives Matter being legitimized and that folks, including white folks, are supporting that movement, there's hope that there's allyship that can be created among all races, including Asian Americans, and education of other groups to understand the common humanity we all have is really critical, but perhaps the hardest thing to do. I think we have to change this whole culture, understand that reckoning of racism needs to be had in this country, and it includes Asian Americans.
Dale Gulagi, founder of the Asian Law Caucus, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Homelessness in the U.S. grew last year for the fourth year in a row. More than 580,000 people were living outside or in shelters on a single night in January 2020. That's according to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The numbers do not reflect the impact of the pandemic, which forced many more people out of their homes and also prompted others to seek shelter. NPR's Pam Fessler reports.
John Mendez and a colleague of the nonprofit Bethesda Cares are filling boxes with personal items to give people living on the streets in Montgomery County, Maryland.
Hand warmers, clean socks, bottled water, and then we have these little care kits like soap, shampoo, toothpaste,
Masks. Lots of masks. Mendez says the pandemic has been especially hard on those who are homeless, but it's had at least one positive impact. Several clients who refused help for more than a decade finally agreed to get off the streets and into permanent housing.
When you're out there and you're in the hustle and bustle every day on the streets and you see people getting on the metro by the thousands, then all of a sudden nobody's getting on the metro. There's no foot traffic. There's nobody out there. It's a different world. And that's a scary thing for a lot of our people.
They were suddenly alone and cut off from conveniences like store bathrooms. Mendez says that's helped the county keep its homeless numbers down, although new faces keep showing up. Becky Ligo of Housing Solutions Tulsa says they've seen similar changes in Oklahoma. Her county was able to take advantage of unused hotel space and move more than 400 people off the streets this winter. But there are other troubling trends.
Anecdotally, what we've seen is anywhere from 100 to 300 new people experiencing homelessness coming into our system every single month. Part of that is due to the fact that we're the 11th highest evictor in the country, according to Eviction Lab, and so there's just a ton of inflow of people who are experiencing first-time homelessness.
And the new HUD report, based on numbers collected last year before the pandemic, found that homelessness has been on the rise nationwide since 2016. HUD Secretary Marcia Fudge called the numbers devastating. Family and veterans homelessness didn't improve for the first time in years. A disproportionate share of those who are homeless were Black, 39% of the total. And for the first time since 2007, more single adults, 209,000, were living outside rather than in shelters.
Well, I think it's tragic.
Nan Roman is president and CEO of the National Alliance to End Homelessness.
We know that sheltered people have horrible health conditions. They have substance abuse and mental health and physical disabilities
And are more likely
Are
to
you?
die young. Roman says while some communities moved people inside.
What do you say, Tiffany?
The opposite happened elsewhere. Many shelters limited bed space due to health concerns, and some residents moved outside for fear of contracting the disease. Roman and others worry what happens next when emergency pandemic measures like eviction moratoriums and unemployment insurance end.
No,
The good news
Victorian.
is that a $1.9 trillion COVID relief package includes tens of billions of dollars in new housing
Tiffany
aid.
show you.
It really is just such a huge opportunity at the moment. The question is, are we going to be able to seize it?
She says if the money is spent properly, it could go a long way toward reversing these troubling numbers. Pam Fessler, NPR News.
This is NPR News.
Some conservatives claim that rioters at the U.S. Capitol were technically unarmed since no guns were fired on site. But a review of the federal charges against those involved tells a different story.
What we do know is there were a lot of other weapons that could be lethal weapons as applied.
An effort to downplay violent extremism tomorrow on Morning Edition from NPR News.
Tomorrow morning from 4 to 9 on KERA 90.1.
Support for KERA comes from you, our members, and from ArtCan, a program of the Texas Cultural Trust and Houston Endowment, whose 2021 State of the Arts report finds Texas employs nearly 900,000 innovation workers. More at artcantexas.org. Interabang Books, which encourages you to shop local when you shop online. At interabangbooks.com and in Dallas on Lover's Lane near the Dallas North Tollway.
Good afternoon at 4:30. This is KERA 90.1. I'm Justin Martin. Some COVID-19 vaccine recipients are celebrating on social media, but others are more hesitant to share the good news.
Everyone who is still further back in line is wondering, why hasn't it been me yet? And then by proxy, why has it been you?
Hear why some people are choosing to keep their vaccination status private. That's after the news on KERA 90.1.
Live from NPR News, I'm Dwayne Brown. Georgia's 5 Asian American state lawmakers say more needs to be done to address a rise in violence against Asian Americans, including this week's mass shooting in metro Atlanta. That's where 8 people were killed at 3 Asian massage parlors. From Georgia Public Broadcasting, Stephen Fowler reports.
Georgia passed a hate crimes law last year after a black man, Ahmaud Arbery, was gunned down while jogging by 3 white men. The law adds extra penalties for crimes motivated by identities, including race, religion, sexual orientation, or gender. All but 1 of the 8 killed this week were women, and 6 were women of Asian descent, leading some lawmakers to call it a hate crime. Democratic Representative Bee Nguyen says having such a law on the books is just a first step to stopping the recent rise in attacks on Asian Americans.
A hate crimes law does not prevent hate killing. That is why we have to address the xenophobia, the systemic racism.
A 21-year-old white man has been charged with 8 counts of murder, and prosecutors have not yet indicated if hate crime charges will be filed. For NPR News, I'm Stephen Fowler in Atlanta.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced today the state's large sports and arts venues can open at 20% capacity on April 1st, but as NPR's Sally Herships reports, the reopening process is laying bare the rift between New York's governor and its most prominent mayor.
Cuomo's announcement means thousands of fans can head to Yankee Stadium and the Met City Field when opening games begin next month. Just hours earlier, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio accused the governor of loosening COVID restrictions to gain political support. De Blasio also complained that his administration had not been consulted about other changes Cuomo announced recently, like allowing indoor fitness classes from the start. City officials said they expressed concern that doing so risks spreading the virus.
I'm Sally Herships. You are listening to NPR.
Live from the Texas newsroom, I'm Sasha Cordner. Discrimination and violence against Asian Americans has been on the rise during the pandemic. Congress held a hearing on the issue today after a white man shot and killed 8 people.